So, to begin this sermon today, I'm going to invite everybody to stand up for a minute. We haven't done a lot of standing so far in this service. That's a little bit different. We're standing right now. And turn to your neighbors and give them a high five because someone around you has survived the first week of school. Someone has. So just give people a high five. Tell them congratulations. Let them know that you're happy. When you're done, you can be seated. Good job, and congratulations to everyone, parent, teacher, aide, librarian, everyone who survived the first week of school. I want to tell you that now you can relax, but we know that's not true. The emails are going to keep coming, the routines are going to continue to be changed and adjusted and tweaked and all the things, so you can't really relax, but at least we're going to celebrate that you made it through the first week. All of this back to school talk has really got me thinking about school and the memories that I have, and for some reason, I remember 6th through 9th grade more than anything else before college. It doesn't make sense. I don't quite understand. I remember when my 6th grade science teacher, math teacher, made a joke, and we all laughed, and then he stopped laughing in the middle of the group of kids laughing, and he looked at me, and he made fun of my laugh in front of the whole, this happened. And he made fun of my laugh. And I remember the head of every single 6th grade student like swirling at me. Whether that actually happened, I don't know. In my memory, slow-mo, looking at me like I am just the biggest weirdo in the class. I remember my 9th grade biology teacher starting a lesson, and she started it by saying, "You are what you eat." And she showed us a picture of a body made out of fruits and vegetables and a few hamburgers. It was very weird. It was very weird. But I remember it, so I guess it worked. I remember playing volleyball, which I started playing volleyball in middle school and then played in high school. And when I was in middle school, I was short, and I just knew that I was going to grow those 8 inches so that one day I'd be able to spike that ball over the net. And alas, that never happened. And I continue to be 5'7", like I am right now, which you all know. 5'4", being a setter, being a digger, and never being able to be a hitter, and it was very sad. And the last thing I remember is my English teacher teaching us the structure of a story, the basic structure. One of our candles went out. The Holy Spirit is wafting towards me right now. The basic structure of a story, and it kind of looks like a heart monitor. You have the setting, and then you have the conflict. And the conflict and the tension builds until it gets to a climactic point where everything comes to a head, and then the conflict starts to resolve. It goes down, and you have the setting again. So it kind of looks like a heart monitor. If we were looking at this verse, this chapter in John 6, from the perspective of that basic structure of a story, we started with the setting, with the feeding of the 5,000. And then we had the conflict start building as Jesus starts talking about spiritual food and don't work for food that spoils, work for the food of heaven. And they're like, "What are you talking about? We don't know." And then he keeps telling them these things that I've come down from heaven and they don't understand. And the conflict is building and building and building until these verses today. We get to the climactic point of John chapter 6, where Jesus takes it maybe one step too far. He says, "I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever. This bread is my flesh. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood will live." Okay, y'all, come on. That's crazy. That's crazy talk. The crowds that are listening to Jesus, at this point, they go, "Whoa, okay. What? Eat your flesh and drink your blood? You're talking about giving us flesh to eat?" I imagine that crowd looked at him the way those 6th grade math students looked at me when the teacher made fun of my laugh. They were like, this guy is a weirdo. If we were translating it into our modern day world, I really think what we'd hear is, are you kidding me, Jesus? What is wrong with you? It wasn't just like this, oh, this is an interesting teaching, I'm not sure what to do. It was like, full stop, hold up. I do not know if I can continue to go down this road with you. So not only is what Jesus said anti-Jewish law, and that's mostly who he's talking to, it's against the Jewish law to consume blood. That's not kosher. Plus, there was a Greco-Roman pagan cult at the time that believed that if you symbolically ate your god, you would take on that god's power. So they took food and pretended symbolically that it was their god so that they could take it in. So Jesus says this, and first it's anti-Jewish law, and then it sounds like paganism, and also it's just bizarre. It just is. And people are looking at him like he's crazy. But Jesus doesn't back down. He doesn't go, oh, okay, hang on, I realize that was a little intense. Let me explain it differently. In fact, he just plows right on through. Verse 53, very truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life. Okay, Linda, do we have a picture? So, last week, Megan was here practicing for music, and she was going through the pews, and she found a worship guide from last week, and she put it on my desk for me. And I don't know if you can tell, but right there on the title, Wonder Bread, which was the title of last week's sermon, that first word is cannibals? I also love this part right here, eye roll. Eye roll. I don't know which student did it. I didn't ask my daughter if it was her because I didn't want to know. I don't know who wrote this, but that first word, cannibals, that's a great question. Because when you hear Jesus talking about eating flesh and drinking blood, that's exactly what I think of first. Are we talking about cannibalism? I had a youth kid once. 2 of my former youth students are here visiting today, by the way, so I don't know if y'all remember this. But I had a youth kid once who we were talking about this passage, and they said, wait, drink his blood? Like vampires? So is Jesus inviting us to be cannibals, or is Jesus inviting us to be vampires? I don't know about you, but I didn't sign up for either of those things, and I'm not quite comfortable with either of them. He uses the term to eat and drink, referring to his flesh and blood multiple times in this section. Verse 53, 54, 56. In verse 57, he says, the one who eats me will live because of me. Literal translation, the one who eats me will live because of me. And that word eats, if we were really to translate it correctly, it would be the word, just stay with me for a second, okay? It would be the word choose. Whoever chews my flesh, he said, whoever chews on me will live. The one who chews this bread will live forever. I'm a pastor, and I've been to 2 different seminaries. I have 2 different seminary degrees, and this is awkward. It's an awkward teaching. It's a hard thing to take. This phrasing, this terminology, it makes me slightly uncomfortable, and I'm used to the concept of the bread of life. Of course, it was disconcerting to the people who heard it in Jesus' day and time. But even though we know that he's not promoting cannibalism or vampirism, and he's not being literal, obviously there was a real point that he was trying to make here. Or Jesus wouldn't have kept hammering it home over and over and over again. So why did he do it? Why so much emphasis on the drinking of blood and the eating of flesh, as if we were literally expected to chew on Jesus? Well, consider this with me this morning. Maybe this new way that Jesus is offering us to live, maybe this new life is only real when it becomes a part of us. Maybe it is only real when it becomes a part of us. Maybe he's trying to get us to understand that the only way we can actually find new life, actually experience Jesus, is to take him in and let him be part of us, consume him, as it were, and let it come out. That's what happens with food, right? We take it in, and then it becomes a part of us. That crazy, bizarre picture that my 9th grade biology teacher showed us of the human body made out of fruits and vegetables and a few hamburgers. Her point was the food you eat goes into your cells, it affects your blood, it affects all sorts of other things. And science has actually gone even further since I was in 9th grade, which wasn't that long ago. But science has gone even further, and there's been all this study done on the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the longest nerve in our body, and what the vagus nerve does, what all these studies have shown, is that the food that we eat, when it gets into our guts, our small intestine, it literally affects what we think, sometimes within minutes, depending on what you've eaten. It affects our neural pathways. It affects how our brain functions. It affects how our hands and feet work. It affects what our brain tells the rest of our body to do. Because of this nerve that connects the two, the food that we consume actually affects the way we think, the way we act, the things we do in this world. So it goes to our bellies first, but then it goes out every other way. Food is internal nourishment, but it affects our outward reality too. And this is true with the body of Christ as well. Jesus knew that the new life he was offering would transform everything and transform us from the inside out. If we wanted to experience new life, the kind that satisfies, like the bread he had just fed that crowd, we have to actually take him into ourselves. Let him be a part of us. Let him become one with us in order to experience life from him. And even though the concept of eating flesh and drinking blood, chewing on Jesus, if you will, is metaphorical, the action here is still centered in reality. We aren't actually eating and drinking his flesh. That's the metaphor, but the eating and drinking is not. The eating and drinking is real. That's an experience. That's something that takes place in the real world. I had a friend once. She's still my friend. I shouldn't say once. I still have a friend. But once, a long time ago, she was very, very particular about the things she would eat. She would not eat sugar. She would not eat baked goods. She would not eat her birthday cake. She just would not put it in her body. But she still wanted to. She still craved those things. So she would go to like a bakery or a grocery store, or she'd sit next to the rest of the people at the table if they ordered dessert, and she would smell it like that. And she'd say, it's like I'm practically eating it. I'm practically eating it when I do this. Now, y'all, I'm not going to ridicule her. I'm not going to judge her for her choices, but I am going to say it is not practically the same thing. It's not. Smelling the dessert and eating the dessert, smelling the bread and eating the bread, it is not practically the same thing. The actual experience of eating and drinking is very different. And because of the vagus nerve, it has very different implications for our bodies and how we live, from the mental practice of pretending like you ate and drank. Now, I get that she was trying to be healthy, but the metaphor stays. There's a difference in actually consuming Jesus, actually making Jesus a part of us, versus just kind of smelling, versus just kind of letting Jesus live maybe in our heads, maybe in our beliefs. As odd as these teachings are, one thing is quite clear, that the life that he offers us is an experience, something that lives in our bodies, in reality. Jesus doesn't give us life by arguing theology. He doesn't give us life by talking about rhetoric and method and the right, way to do a worship service. He spends his time healing and loving and being present among people. The life that he gives, the life that sustains us, it does not just live up here. It lives out here, in our hands, in our feet, in our actions. It lives in our bodies. I want to confess to you that I really miss the Olympics. I'm sad The Olympics ended and school started. So, I mean, there was sad and happy next to each other, but I really miss the Olympics, and my two favorite sports to watch are gymnastics and volleyball. Of course, because I played it. Men's, women's. Gym is better than beach. That's what I prefer to watch. But what I know is because of those years that I spent playing, when I watch them play, I know what's going on. I know why she missed that serve. I know that that ball didn't go high enough for her to get it over. I know the difference in a dink and a lift and why one of them is legal and one of them is not. I get mad at the libero when he has one job to dig that spike and he can't do it. Apparently, playing volleyball 25 years ago qualifies me to judge Olympic athletes now. But the thing is, even though I know all of this stuff about how to play volleyball, and I remember some things, if you were to put a ball in my hand right now and put me on a court and say, okay, get the ball over the net, I do not know if I'd be able to do it. I know that I need to throw it up. I know that I need to hit it with this hand. I know that I can't snap my wrist too much or the ball is going to fall. But it's completely different in knowing that here and in actually practicing the muscle memory to know how high to throw that ball. And in actually building the muscle in the other arm to make sure I hit it hard enough to get over the net, but not so hard that it goes completely out of bounds. Letting the skills and the knowledge of volleyball live in my body is completely different than them just living in my brain. And this is the same for our Christian lives too. We need both. We need it to live in our minds, we need it to live in our hearts, and we also need it to live out in our fingers and our hands and how we function in this world. But too often I think we stop at just the mental, just the heart change, just the belief. One of the points that I think Jesus was trying to get across is that the life he offers, like eating and drinking, is an experience that lives in reality. They are embodied actions. And when we eat the bread of life and we drink the cup of the new covenant, we are melding belief and body. We are melding heart and actions and living. We're acknowledging that the life that Jesus offers comes in and also goes outward to other people. We take him in with our bodies and we live him out with our bodies, with our hearts and minds and hands and feet and mouths. The internal nourishment becomes our embodied reality. And sometimes this embodiment means that we sacrifice for other people. We give our time or our space or our money for the sake of helping others. Sometimes this embodying faith means that we stand up for other people. We put our necks on the line to fight for those less fortunate. We work towards social justice and peace in our societies. Sometimes an embodied faith means that we actively encourage other people. We bless them. We speak good things over them. We're kind to them, reminding them of who God says they are. There are so many ways to actually embody this faith, to let it be an experience that gets in us, but also gets out of us in our bodies. So my question for us today is, how might God be inviting you to experience the holy with your body this week? Chew on that while we sing this next song.